I repeat, I don't understand why we don't get in a room, iron it out, and shake hands. Fever guard Caitlin Clark said, "This is how business is. You look at each other in the eye, you shake hands, you respect both sides."
Listen to that. Listen to that one more time. That's not some union rep reading off a script. That's not a PR statement drafted by a committee of agents and lawyers. That is a 23-year-old woman who just happens to be the most valuable player in women's basketball history, looking at this entire circus and saying what every fan, every owner, and every rational person on the planet has been thinking for months. Just get in a room and get it done. Shake hands like adults. Respect both sides. And yet somehow, the Players Union has managed to turn a 280% salary cap increase into a hostage negotiation where nobody can figure out who the hostage actually is. The WNBA CBA negotiations have reached the absolute breaking point, and the person who finally said the quiet part out loud isn't a veteran with 15 years of grievances. It's Caitlin Clark. And the fact that she had to be the one to say it should embarrass every single person sitting at that negotiating table.
Caitlin Clark hasn't said a whole lot during this CBA process. She made her feelings very clear the last time USA Basketball got together, and the word of the day when they interviewed her then was compromise. The sentence of the day was, "We need to still play basketball in 2026. Full stop. We need to still play basketball in 2026.
Did you catch that word? Compromise. Not demands, not ultimatums, not threats about striking or locking anybody out. Compromise. The biggest star in women's sports, arguably the most powerful voice in all of basketball, men's and women's, and her message to the entire league and the entire union is one word: compromise. And then she follows it up with a sentence that should be tattooed on the forehead of every single negotiator in that room. We need to still play basketball in 2026. Full stop. That's it. That's the whole thing. While the union leadership has been going back and forth with proposals that move the needle by 1% here, 0.5% there, playing games with numbers while the March 10th deadline barrels down on them like a freight train. Caitlin Clark is out here speaking the language of someone who actually understands what's at stake. And if you're getting value out of this breakdown, do me a favor. Smash that like button and hit subscribe because we're just getting started, and this one's going to get spicy.
Breanna Stewart looked like she was in a hostage video. I mean, I was like, are you filming this from the bowels of someplace in the Middle East? I mean, seriously, somebody's got the camera on you, and you're having to be like, yeah, we'll strike. If we got to strike, by God, we'll strike.
Now let's talk about the contrast here because it is absolutely fascinating. On one side, you've got Caitlin Clark at USA Basketball Camp, calm, collected, measured, saying, let's get in a room, look each other in the eye, and shake hands like professionals. On the other side, you've got the Vice President of the Players Union, Breanna Stewart, looking like somebody forced her at gunpoint to record a hostage video about striking. And I'm not being dramatic here. Watch the footage. Go back and look at it. That is not the body language of a woman who believes in what she's saying. That's the body language of someone who knows the union's position is crumbling but can't say it out loud because the old guard is watching. The disconnect between those two messages tells you everything about where this negotiation actually stands. Clark is saying what the majority of players are thinking. Stewart is saying what the union leadership needs her to say. And those are two very, very different things. But here's where it gets really interesting, because Stewart didn't stay in that hostage room for long.
She's speaking again. I guess she escaped the hostage situation because once again, she's back to, we need to get this shit done. Quick. And finally, somebody brings up something that nobody talks about. You can't all get in a room and get this done. Drop dead date 2 days from now.
You see what happened there? Stewart went from we'll strike if we have to actually agreeing with Clark that they should all sit down in a room and hammer this out face to face. That's not a coincidence. That's the gravitational pull of common sense overriding whatever hardline talking points the union leadership has been pushing. When the biggest star in the sport says, "Get in a room and get it done," people listen. When the vice president of the union echoes that sentiment 24 hours later, that's not agreement. That's surrender. That's someone who realized the hardline approach is a losing hand and the cards are already on the table. Now here's what nobody's talking about. And this is the part that should make every single fan furious.
The league imposed a March 10th target date during a bargaining session February 23rd. If the deadline passes without a deal, the league says its 30th season, slated to tip off May 8th, is at a risk of being delayed. Both sides have traded proposals back and forth, neither making notable economic concessions in recent days.
Let that sink in. Neither side making notable economic concessions in recent days. The league set March 10th as the deadline. The season tips off May 8th, and the union's strategy has been to inch their proposals down by fractions of a percent while the clock runs out. This isn't negotiating. This is stalling. And the person calling it out isn't some talking head on television. It's the player who's generating more revenue than anyone else in the league. Think about the absurdity of this situation for a second. Caitlin Clark is the reason the WNBA's television ratings tripled. She's the reason arena after arena sells out. She's the reason advertisers are lining up with checkbooks open. She is, by any measurable standard, the single most important financial asset in the history of women's professional basketball. And she's standing there saying, "Please, for the love of God, just get in a room and figure this out." And the union, the body that's supposed to represent her interests, can't even do that.
Quote, "I think it would be great for all of us to sit in a room until we get it done." Stewart said, "If that means sitting in there for hours and hours at a time, let's do it. That's for the better of the player. While a situation like that has never happened before, there's a first time for everything. We want to get a deal done. We want to have a season. We just need to find the right numbers that reflect it."
Can't argue with that. Genuinely cannot argue with a single word of it. But here's my question. If both the biggest star in the league and the vice president of the union are saying the same thing, get in a room and get it done, then who exactly is stopping that from happening? Who in the union leadership is so dug in on their position that they're willing to risk an entire season, willing to risk the momentum this league has built over the last 2 years, willing to risk everything over a revenue-sharing percentage they've already dropped from 50% of gross all the way down to 26% of gross? At some point, you have to ask yourself, is the union negotiating for the players, or is the union negotiating for the union? And that brings us to the part that's going to make a lot of people uncomfortable, but somebody needs to say it.
Look, if you're just sending another 1% drop, then you're bullshitting and you're stalling. He's not wrong. He's not right. Until you start knocking 4 or 5% off your demands, where there could be a little wiggle room for the WNBA owners to be like, okay, F it, we'll give you another percent. We'll go from 15 to 16. Okay, let's get this deal done.
That right there is the truth bomb that the union doesn't want to hear. Dropping your demand from 26% to 25% isn't a counterproposal. It's theater. It's the negotiating equivalent of moving a chess piece 1 square while the timer runs out. The league has been crystal clear about where they stand on revenue sharing. They have not moved. They are not going to move. And every day the union spends pretending otherwise is a day closer to this season being delayed or canceled entirely. And who gets hurt by that? Not the owners. They've got other businesses, other investments, other revenue streams. The people who get hurt are the players. The same players this union is supposed to be fighting for. The ones making $120,000 a year who can't afford to miss a single paycheck. The rookies who've been waiting their entire lives for their first WNBA season. Those are the people paying the price for this posturing.
League has been crystal ass clear. Spring water clear. Smart water clear. Yeah, I couldn't get it. I mean, what are we doing? What are we doing? They have not wavered on revenue sharing. This is not a surprise. This is not shocking news.
I mean, what more do you need to hear? The league's position on revenue sharing has been the same for a year. A full year. 12 months of the same answer. And the union keeps coming back with proposals that are 1% lower than the last one, like somehow the 37th time is going to be the charm. At what point does perseverance become delusion? At what point does holding the line become holding your own players hostage? Because that's what this is starting to look like. The union is so committed to winning a revenue-sharing battle they've already lost that they're willing to sacrifice the season to prove a point nobody asked them to prove. And here's the kicker that nobody wants to say out loud, but I'm going to say it anyway. Caitlin Clark shouldn't have to be the adult in the room. She's 23 years old. She's in the middle of building one of the most remarkable careers in basketball history. She should be focused on training, on getting better, on preparing for a season that makes last year look like a warm-up act. Instead, she's at a USA basketball camp having to publicly lobby for her own union to do its job. Think about how backwards that is. The player generating the most revenue in the league has to go on camera and beg the people who represent her to stop playing games and close a deal. That's not leadership from the union. That's a failure of leadership so massive it should trigger a complete overhaul of who's sitting at that negotiating table.
Why on earth have these players not put Caitlin Clark as the players union president? Maybe she doesn't want to do it. That's how a players union president should talk, sound, and act, not like an activist.
Now that's a spicy take, and I know some people are going to lose their minds over it, but sit with it for a second. Strip away the politics. Strip away the feelings. Look at it purely from a business standpoint. Caitlin Clark's message has been consistent from day one. Compromise. Get in a room. Look each other in the eye. Shake hands. Respect both sides. Play basketball in 2026. That is the language of someone who understands business, who understands negotiation, who understands that both sides need to walk away feeling like they got something. Compare that to the messaging we've been getting from the union leadership: strike threats, hostage videos, counter proposals that move the needle by a single percentage point, hardline demands on revenue sharing that the league has told them 100 times is off the table. Which approach sounds like it's actually going to get a deal done? Which approach sounds like it's actually going to put money in players' pockets and basketballs on the court in May?
The league has told you revenue sharing is off the table. They've been saying that for a year. I mean, at this point, the players are negotiating against themselves.
And that is the sentence that sums up this entire disaster. The players are negotiating against themselves. The league put an offer on the table that includes a 280% increase in the salary cap. Maximum salaries jumping from $249,000 to $1.3 million. Average salaries going from $120,000 to $540,000 in year one alone. Revenue sharing bonuses that just paid out $8 million from last season, the first time that's ever happened. A salary cap that grows to $8.5 million by year 6. These aren't crumbs. This is the single biggest economic leap in the history of women's professional sports, and the union's response is to keep haggling over a revenue-sharing percentage that the league will not move on, while the deadline is literally 2 days away. So let me tell you what's about to happen, because the writing is on the wall and it's written in permanent marker. This deal is going to get done. It has to get done, because too many players have seen the numbers, done the math, and realized that fighting for an extra 2% of gross revenue isn't worth losing a season where revenue-sharing bonuses could double or triple based on the growth trajectory the league is on. The players who are actually moving the needle, the ones filling arenas and driving television deals, they want to play. They want to get paid. And they want to stop watching their union burn calendar days on a position that was dead on arrival 6 months ago. Caitlin Clark didn't just enter the chat. She kicked the door down. She told the union what every reasonable person has been screaming for weeks. Stop posturing. Stop sending joke proposals. Stop threatening strikes that nobody wants. Get in a room, look each other in the eye, and get this done.
Caitlin Clark said, let's get it done. She is the most powerful voice in women's sports. Let's just keep it real. One could argue she's the most powerful voice in all of basketball, men's and women's.
And that's not hyperbole. That's not fan talk. That is an objective assessment of where the power sits in this sport right now. When Caitlin Clark speaks, the entire basketball world listens. When she says compromise, the conversation shifts. When she says get in a room and shake hands, the vice president of the union echoes her within 24 hours. That's influence. That's leadership. And it's coming from a 23-year-old who doesn't even hold a title in the union. Not from the people who are supposed to be running this negotiation. And here's what it all comes down to. Here's the question that's going to define the WNBA for the next decade. The Players' Union has a choice to make, and they have about 48 hours to make it. They can keep grinding away at a revenue-sharing number that the league has told them for 12 straight months is not going to change. They can keep sending counter-proposals that drop 1% at a time while the season slips further and further away. They can keep recording hostage videos about striking while their most important player stands at a podium saying, please, for the love of the game, just get this done. Or they can listen to Caitlin Clark. They can get in a room. They can look across the table at the people offering them a 280% salary cap increase, $1.3 million max contracts, and a revenue-sharing structure that just put bonus checks in every single player's bank account for the first time ever. They can shake hands, they can respect both sides, and they can go play basketball. The choice should be obvious. The fact that it isn't? That's why the Players' Union should be embarrassed. This deal needs to get done. The players know it. The league knows it. Caitlin Clark just said it out loud. The only people who haven't figured it out yet are the ones sitting at the negotiating table, drafting counter-proposals that move the needle by fractions while the biggest opportunity in women's sports history ticks away like a clock they refuse to look at. Clock's ticking. March 10th isn't moving. The league isn't blinking. And the woman who's bankrolling this entire operation just told everybody exactly what needs to happen. What do you think? Is the union going to listen to Clark and get this done? Or are they going to blow it chasing a number the league already told them no on? Drop your take in the comments because this is about to get very real, very fast. And if you haven't already, like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell because the way this is moving, we might have a deal or a disaster by the time you wake up tomorrow morning. And either way, you're going to want to be here when it breaks.